Of October 6th, 2021. I am the vice chair sitting in for Chair Ted Luthan today. Ted cannot join us, but so Kara, do you want me to read some of the COVID blah blah?
If you have it, that would be great. Yeah.
Consistent with Executive Order N 2920, in-person participation by the public will not be permitted, and no physical location from which the public may observe the meeting will be available. Remote public participation is allowed using the Zoom program. Do I need to do more than that?
I think you're fine. And just an advisory on that for the public. If you have logged on via YouTube, you can only view from that format. If you'd like to join, you will need to and comment on an item. You would need to go to the city's website and click on the Zoom information and join the Zoom meeting. Additionally, just for the board's information, the governor did sign AB, I think it was 163, to allow for additional remote meetings, I believe through the end of the year or through the end of January, I forget which. And council has directed us to continue city meetings at least through the end of November remotely, and also directed staff and the city clerk to work on getting the technology up and running for a hybrid formats, so that we do go back into in-person meeting people who do want to join remotely, because we've had a huge increase in participation, frankly, with the remote meetings. We can continue to engage the public that way. I will try to keep this board better addressed, but updated on that. But at least through November, we will be remote. The other thing we are trying to work out is when we do go back in person, COVID's still going to be a factor. We may be at a different location, like one of the youth annex rooms where there's a bit more space rather than City Hall, which doesn't necessarily have the space for social distancing, especially for items. And we know we're going to have a number from the public. So.
Okay, very good. Thanks for that. So should we do a roll call?
Yes. Would you like me to do it, or would you like to do it?
Please go ahead.
Okay. All right. Carrie Bush.
Yeah, I'm here.
Marshall Balfe.
Here.
Christine Level.
Here. Here.
Thank you. And Vice Chair Langberg.
Here.
All right. And Chair Luthan did notify us that he would not be here today, so he's excused.
Okay, right. And we have no minutes to approve. So Kara, do you have any updates you'd like to give us from the planning department?
Sure, a few items, and actually, Lars, would you like to update on the PAC's deliberations today and that work?
Sure, yeah. So I'm, as some of you know, maybe I'm the design review board member as a liaison to the public art committee. We've just finished up, or we're finishing a process where there's now going to be a community sculpture garden in Ives Park. 8 4x4 concrete pads have been poured, and we did a call for entries, and we've selected of the ones we got. There was 6 that we all liked very much, and those will be presented to City Council on the 19th. To try and move those ahead, and we are trying to figure out how to find a couple more people to put on the other 2 pads, but we decided to choose, quality over quantity in this case. Of the ones we got, these 6 were clear, successful pieces that everybody agreed on. So that's very exciting, kind of piece of the Ives Park master plan and the Public Art Committee's work.
Thank you, Lars. And another component of the Ives Park master plan that we're working on this year is the Calder Creek naturalization. And there are 2 components to that. One is the technical work of hydrology and creek bed design work, but a hand-in-hand component of that is being done by Urban Water Rights Restoration Institute, WRI. And they have a fellow, Jessica Wilding, I forget the name of the fellowship, but we have partnered with them. And they are doing a community visioning process to see what work with the community in terms of what that creek naturalization could look like. They have had a kickoff meeting with the Planning Commission about a month and a half ago, and we do have the second meeting for that, which is design direction discussion, which is scheduled October 26th with our Planning Commission. And especially those of you who are interested in landscape and Ives Park, which most of you I know are, if you can join us that night, that would be great. The other meetings are tentative at this point, but they will be returning to the Planning Commission with the design alternatives, likely in November early December. The first meeting in December, and the final recommended option developed and presented to the commission in January, and then to council after that. We are putting together a flyer, and I'll certainly make sure that gets to this group when we have all of those dates confirmed. That will also be posting down at Ives Park and other public places, hopefully early next week. But that is hopefully of interest to this group. Additionally, on October 26th, the local hazard mitigation plan that we've been working on, I just had a final meeting with the consultant for that yesterday to finish up the public draft, which will be released next week. And the Planning Commission will be reviewing that on the 26th as well. The Huntley Square project, which this group did the preliminary review for the planned community zoning. That's the 10 mini townhome project on Bodega at 7950 Bodega. That we have published the CEQA report for that, the environmental study, and that is scheduled to go to Planning Commission at their November 12th meeting, and they will be providing a recommendation to City Council. City Council is the final approval body for that. And then obviously it would be returning to the DRB for DRB/tree board for the design review and any tree permits they require. And then lastly, next Tuesday, the 12th, the Planning Commission is going to be hearing about and discussing a potential gas station ban within the city of Sebastopol. Our Climate Action Committee has already reviewed that and recommended, done some language recommendations, but unanimously recommended that move forward at council's direction. And so the Planning Commission will be discussing that next Tuesday. So lots of good stuff this fall.
Thank you. Thanks for that. And could we get a little introduction from John and tell us about himself here?
Wait,
Or Carrie, you can tell us about it.
I have a question for Carrie.
Sure.
Quick. So what is this gas station ban?
So it would be
New gas stations, repair gas stations?
Thank you. Thank you. So the intent is to ban any expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure for existing gas stations, but not retail or other components of the site, other than safety and safety and environmental upgrades, and then to not allow any new gas stations.
And the purpose of this is?
To stop encouraging fossil fuel use.
Okay. We'll just use this fossil fuel to make the electricity for the electric cars.
Most energy, and this is something that actually you'll hear if you join the discussion.
I'm just kidding around, Carrie. You can go.
I was going to say, we actually discussed this because we discussed electric vehicle, and John was there, so he started laughing too. We did actually discuss, well, what if someone wanted to do an electric vehicle charging station, and that's why we defined it as fossil fuel. But and then yes, we did get a little bit in the discussion that electricity in our county is 100% either geothermal, hydro, or solar. So I know you were joking, Christine, but we actually had a serious discussion about that. And yes, thank you, Lars. The those are the upcoming items of interest, but of certainly of interest to this committee, since the associate planner is liaison to the DRB, but also to the planning department and city, is John Jay has joined us as our new associate planner. He came on board 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago. And John, please introduce yourself.
Third week on the job here. So my name is John. I've grown up in Sonoma County, Petaluma in specific for the entirety of my life. Went to Arizona State to get my bachelor's degree in urban planning. Last couple of years, I was working with as a contract planner with the city of Santa Rosa, doing the fire rebuild permit review from the Tubbs fire and a little bit of the glass fire. So permit review for the last couple of years. This is kind of my first full-on planning scope position. So it's a lot more information that I'm having to absorb. But I look forward to meeting all of you in person eventually and working with you guys over the next however long.
Great.
Thank you.
Welcome. Nice to have you on board. Okay, so let's move on. Do we have any comments from the public regarding items not on the agenda?
We have not received any via email since our last meeting, and we do have a member of the public here who's also an applicant, but if Craig, I don't know if you have any comments not about your item. All right.
Okay, great. And any statements of conflicts of interest from the board? Okay, well then we'll move into our agenda, which is our first quarter applications for the city's facade improvement program. So Carrie, if you could let us know all about that.
Yes, thank you. So our facade improvement program is a program that does now a 75% match up to $2,500 to local businesses who for facade improvements, permanent improvements, not the temporary parklets and things like that we've seen so recently, but permanent improvements anywhere in the city in a commercial business. And we have 2 applications before you today. First, the total allocation in this year's budget is $20,000, which is the same as last year. Last year we saw, with the new way we're running the program, much better usage. I think we ended up awarding 17 or 18,000 of the 20,000. In prior years, I believe we had awarded $6,000 or $7,000. So I'm looking to hopefully build on that this year. And I just spoke with someone this morning and encouraged them to apply for the next round. So this is the first quarter, so we haven't allocated any of that funding yet. We do have 2 applications. One is for a sign for Sonoma Chocolatiers, which was actually approved in the last fiscal year. They simply did not get their paperwork done in time before our fiscal year closed, and we're not allowed to carry over those funds. So I won't really present that, although most of you have probably seen the sign. It is actually up at this point. And so we are recommending that project just be reapproved by this board. The total project cost for that was $1,772 for the painting and the signage, and it qualifies for a rebate of $1,329.49. The other project is 132 North Main Street, and they are requesting a facade improvement grant to apply for exterior painting of the brick facade and window trim. This is the store that was, I believe, former Rosemary's Garden. Is that correct, Craig? Thank you. And is the recently opened Flourish, which is an indoor plant store. The paint is anticipated to be approximately 1,000 square feet. And the cost is anticipated to be $4,830 for the painting of the exterior walls and the trim. So it qualifies for the full rebate of $2,500. And I do have some photos I can show just of the existing. And I don't know, Craig, if you wanted to say a few words about it while I show the images.
Thanks, Carrie. Yeah, she moved in, I'd say probably about 2 months ago, and it just looks like the outside just needs to be freshened up. We're going to do a white paint around the brick facade, and then do a real nice dark brown around the trim, just to kind of give you an idea from those photos. That's kind of basically the outcome of what it's going to look like. It'll just freshen it up. It used to be part of East West Cafe, so it all kind of blends together. So we just want it to stand out and just look a little bit better on the street.
Right, thanks to you, Craig. And so that is it for staff's presentation. Happy to answer any questions, and I can leave these photos up for the board.
Great, thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Craig. Anybody on the board have questions for staff on this one? No?
No, I don't have any. Seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah. Christine or Marshall, any questions of staff?
No questions from me.
Okay. All right.
And Marshall, just so you know, I did mute you because we heard some background noise, but please feel free to unmute yourself now.
Okay, great, thank you. I guess then let's. So Craig, you have nothing else to present. That's right. What you've said is good.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. I guess any questions for the applicant as well from our board? No?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well then, how about any discussion about this here project? Seems pretty straightforward, as Carrie said.
I mean, you mentioned the word stand out, and I think the white on the Rosemary's Garden prior Rosemary's Garden, it will stand out, and that would actually be a good thing. Given the nature and context of the business that's gone in there now, I think they have a pretty clean brand, and I think this identity paint job would, freshen that up as well. So if I had to add any feedback, that would be, I think, about it.
Okay, great, thank you. Christine or Marshall, any comments?
No.
Okay. Christine?
I completely agree with Carrie. I think it'll be a nice change and stand out, and it's consistent with the business. So
Okay, thank you.
completely happy with the application.
Great. I had one question I just remembered. It's more of a staff question. In the application, they talked about starting work at 5 or 5:30 in the morning, and I don't know if that's allowed. So I know in San Francisco, I remember years ago working there, like you couldn't start before 7 or 7:30 or something like that. So that's just
Sure. Yeah, so I can answer that. So I don't believe the Public Works Department which issues the encroachment permit for work from the sidewalk. I don't believe they have a kind of restriction. And in fact, in some of the commercial areas, they want it to be earlier for just obvious reasons. Once pedestrians start activating the street, it's a lot more difficult. We do have a construction noise ordinance, or we have a noise ordinance that has certain hours if you're doing construction noise. However, I don't anticipate that even the pressure washing that's proposed of the building facade, it would have any issues or conflict with that.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, well, this all seems great. I have no other comments, so would someone like to put forward a motion?
Sure, I take it that a motion will approve both of the projects in its entirety.
If you include that in your motion, it will.
Yeah, sure, I'll make a
Oh,
motion.
so before we go there then,
Sure.
because we haven't talked about the other one,
Right.
I have a question about that sort of precedent setting. If somebody somebody does some work and doesn't get their paperwork together ahead of time and comes back next quarter for reimbursement, seems like that's what's happening here. I had to fix my storefront door here and I didn't think that I could use this money, but my sense was once you do the work, you can't get the money. So I just would like some input on that, Carrie.
Yeah, so this is a little bit unusual because it was approved already prior to the work being done. And in fact, I believe the work was done. The invoices just didn't get to us until after the fiscal year closed. So in my mind, it does meet that. But I will say that we have always had issues with applications, even when it was a rolling basis. For applications that we approved towards the end of the fiscal year, where because we're not allowed to do the carryover. And so I almost feel like, perhaps the program that I would like to, for our quarterly, think about how we might restructure the program so that last quarter, which I believe, I was looking at the next deadlines. The next deadline is October 19th, and then there's one in March, and then there's one in January, and then there's one in March, I believe, is the last one, which means that it would come to the DRB first or second meeting in April. We'll certainly try to have it that earlier meeting because applicants always run into this issue if they're approved towards the end of the year. And it might be a discussion with council next year when we do budgeting that there be some sort of grace period or carryover, or just ability for the planning director to, once those funds are committed, that they be able to be carried over until the applicant can get their work done. I do know a couple, even when it was just simple signs, where they weren't able to meet the deadline in the past as well.
Okay. All right. That all makes sense. Thank you. Carry on.
Sure. Well, be easy to make a motion to approve the application as submitted, with no conditions.
Okay, great. Can we have a second on that?
I second that motion.
All right. Any further discussion from anyone? Hearing none, let's take a vote then. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, it passes unanimously then. Frank, thank you for your time.
Great program, going to good use.
Yeah. Thank you, Craig. And just so you know, John will be getting you the approval letter. But at this point, there's no appeal body or anything, so you can proceed with the work at this point.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks.
Great, thanks. And so we have a discussion item next. Tour of past projects. No written report.
Thank you, Lars. So for this item, I think I talked about this a little while ago, but the potential to do a walking tour or something like that, depending on where the sites are. I've done this in past space. I worked in, Mill Valley. You got to go way up into the hills for some of the projects. They were driving tours, but to be able to look at past projects and understand sort of both for new members to understand what the types of things we tend to look for, but also to look and say, hey, you know what, hey, that really didn't actually work out that well, or that condition, or this got changed and that was too significant of a change for staff to handle. And it'll help us as staff and certainly John as he's getting to know the city and the preferences and how the board interprets the design guidelines, excuse me, but also for the board members to be able to talk about it and further the discussion on our design excellence in the city. And so I don't know if any of you have had time to think about different places or sites that you'd like to talk about, or and they don't need to be DRB projects. They could be things that were approved at a staff level, but you felt should have gone to the board and you want to talk through what makes that decision one way or the other.
Hmm. Any thoughts in the crowd?
Well, the one
Well, I
that's
can certainly say that the revived Scoop Cafe, whatever it's called now, next to the Florence Loft, could be an interesting topic of conversation.
Oh, the
That's
one,
not the building. That's not the building that we approved. So how did that happen?
that's the one that's now Flavor Restaurant.
Is that what it is next to the Florence Loft?
The Flavor Bistro, it was the Quonset hut, and I think when I moved in, because it's near me, it was a Mexican market or something.
Yeah. That's the one I'm talking about.
Okay.
That ended up being quite different from what we approved. And how the ADA ramp got approved in place is a complete mystery if you want to ever go take a look at them. But, those were the days. But anyway, I think that would be a good one to have for discussion because that was a classic example. And I think we've had quite a number of cases where we approved something and something different showed up. That's just the one that comes fresh in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Carrie, did you have some other thoughts?
Yeah, I did. I thought Handline might be a good example to look at. We saw them quite a few times. I remember, sort of going back and forth on certain variations in heights, protecting the public from the private sector. There was the in lieu fees of underground wires. It's just a good site development project that I felt might warrant just a good walkthrough. I think there was some autonomy given to a number of those types of projects and those developers. So it could be that, or as well as the Fern Bar kind of thing might be another one to kind of review, because ultimately I think what was built was something a lot different from originally presented.
The Fern Bar, you said, Karen?
Yeah. I mean, there was quite a bit of autonomy there on that project that I don't even know if the DRB even saw. So, and it's not a bad thing. It's really not a bad thing. It's just a matter of review and discussion.
Mm-hmm.
The last one I can think of too is still under works, and that's along Healdsburg Ave going up north. I think
The
it was
mixed
the
use
old-
project at Healdsburg and Murphy.
That's correct. Yeah, and it still sits idle, which is a little.
Yeah, so I can give you an update on that if you're
Okay.
curious.
Yeah, sure I am.
So obviously that project was approved before I got here, but I think the building permit was issued as well. It's one of the few handful of projects that's we all know it's been happening for a long time. I do know that they were getting fairly close to finish it, but the owner passed away a few months ago. So it has been in a probate kind of a situation. And now I do know Steve from the building department is working very closely with the attorneys to try to get resolved and get it completed. So
every project's got a story, doesn't it?
it does. I'm interested to see the headline because I do remember submitting a public comment as a member of the public to this board on that project.
Interesting.
It was about the fence.
Well, I remember the gabbing cages being a huge item of discussion. Remember that, Lars, back in the day? I think, Christine, you possibly were recused from that discussion. I don't remember, but yeah, it was just an interesting unfolding of pieces and parts that work and work well.
Well, yeah, those gabion cages were absolutely classic.
Mm-hmm.
He did not want to pay the dumping fee for the asphalt.
Mm-hmm.
So he put them in those cages. So it's a completely toxic material in those cages. It's asphalt, petroleum. Talk about petroleum products. But there you have it. And the other thing about the Handline building that I thought was really interesting that we didn't consider at the time is building featuring mechanical equipment. Because I mean, that building, when I look at that building, I see mechanical equipment. It's just glaringly up there.
Mm-hmm.
So it really made me think about how essential that kind of thing is when you have the position of the building and the height of the building and the road above the building, and you can, I mean, that would be an architectural consideration, and it was really just an afterthought. Now we have what I call that building featuring mechanical equipment. So that's what you see in my view.
Mhm.
Okay. So yeah, these are
But that's
awesome.
an interesting project in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, and then right next door to it is a project that went through a very different design review process, right? That got approved and
awesome.
appealed, and then had its own. It's had its very own subcommittee on the city council,
Yes, it did.
and that
That would be another one to have.
what's
I
that?
think what we really need to do is we need to have a coffee table book. All the projects that the city can put out, this project, its story.
I will say the way that we generally do these tours is to just notice that, notice it as a special meeting or a special location and actually just do the tour. We don't record it or take any sort of minutes for it. So that there can be some frank discussions without hurting anybody's feelings. That's always what I've handled these. So it doesn't get recorded in a coffee table book or anything like that. I do have a couple of other questions of whether it would be useful to, you mentioned the Florence Lofts, to talk about that project if we're looking at the bistro next door, and then also the Exchange Bank, which was just completed.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's great.
Exchange Bank, I purposely stopped in there, one day just to see it because it's so provocative, and we all liked it. But that would be good. There's one right near me here that I've always been curious about, as well before my time on the DRB, that houses Falafel King right now and the comics place. And it's just, to me, an example of like a question of like, how the hell did that get through design review? That would be my opening question to that building. And I remember I actually brought it up when Lynn Dealer was on the board, and he said, "Oh, I could tell you sometime the story of that one or something," but I never got the story. But it just seems.
Yeah, that was before my time too. Wasn't that a tire shop or something before? It was a remodel.
I think you're right. I think that's maybe part of why it got through, so to speak, as it was a remodel that became a bigger remodel and then became a tear down, and it just happened, I think, from what I understand. But that's all I know about it.
Yeah.
But it's just like such a prominent site in town, and it's just such a dog of a building.
Hey, don't hold back, Lars. You mean the light pole that almost goes through the soffit, like isn't part of the architectural detail there?
I forgot this conversation is being recorded.
Yes. Okay, well, I think I'll work with John to put together sort of a route or a tour, kind of try to assess the time that it might take to do this, and we'll try to maybe schedule it at. I think we do have a one sign item for our next meeting that I know we'll have, but we'll try to find time that is hopefully before the rainy season to try to take a look at some of these, if not all of them, at least some of them, and we can always have a part 2 as well.
Yeah,
it's a great idea.
Great.
Really good.
Great, thank you all. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And we'll try to do a little better background on if there were specific approval items, or make the reports available. Just if you want to sort of jog your memory or see how did that happen.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, great. Thank you for that. So I guess we have nothing else. So if nobody has any other questions, comments, we can adjourn. Sound good?
Good.
Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Lars. Thank you, Karen. Nice to meet you, John.
Nice meeting you.